Most people, when they learn how to knit, learn the basics like casting on and knitting and purling and binding off. And then your first project is usually a scarf or two. This is the scarf pattern that I offer. It's a video tutorial called Your First Scarf. Now, as your knitting teacher, I want you to move on from rectangles as soon as you can. So in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to make this hat, which is a really good second project after you've finished your first rectangle. This pattern is available in 3 sizes: child, adult small, and adult large. And this is available for purchase and download over on my website. And the scarf pattern is as well. The materials you'll need and the needles you'll need are the same as for the scarf pattern, and everything is detailed in the pattern for what you'll need. So first up, we're going to learn how to cast on in the round using circular needles and how to work the rib pattern. And we're going to work with double pointed needles, and we're going to learn how to do some decreases for the crown of the hat. So there are a lot of good lessons in this. And next up, we're going to cast on. Just like when you made your scarf, the first thing we need to do to get going on the hat is to cast on stitches. And if you followed along with the scarf pattern, the first scarf pattern that I offer, we use the long tail cast on, which is what I recommend for this pattern as well. Let's take a look at what we have here. Remember, the details for the needles and yarn that you'll need is all in the pattern. I have most of my stitches cast on here. I've left myself just a few more. Okay, now knitting in the round is going to be different than how we knit our scarf, because we're just going to keep going around and around and around and never turn the work like we did when we were making the scarf. The first thing you want to do after you get all the stitches cast on, the number that you need for the size you're knitting, you want to make sure that nothing is twisted. And in doing that, I'm going to line up all of the little knots from my cast on, so that they're all on the inside of the needle here like this. I have the working yarn and the tail over here on the right hand needle. Okay, and there we go. I don't think anything's twisted anymore. I'm going to separate the tail from the working yarn. I'm going to flap the working yarn over the top and leave the tail on the bottom. Now we need one of these, a little ring marker, so that we know where the beginning of our round is. And I'm going to slide that onto the right needle and pick up the work yarn. Well, first I want to tell you, the working yarn's over here, and this is going to be your first stitch. When you use this yarn to knit this stitch, it's going to close up the loop and you'll be knitting in the round. So we pick everything up, whoops, slide the marker over to the right needle. We start with 2 knit stitches, and then we pull the yarn forward between the 2 needles to work a purl stitch. We covered this in the last lesson, learning to knit a scarf, in combining knits and purls. And we go back to knitting 2, pull the yarn forward, purl 1, put the yarn back, and knit 2. You're going to maintain this pattern not only all the way around, but every row of the hat. You get very used to working the rib pattern. And this is a very stretchy rib. Now you're going to keep working all the way around, around, until you get back to the marker. When you hit the marker again, you'll know that you've finished one round. And when you hit the marker, you'll just slide it from the left needle to the right needle and keep going. It's really easy. Now, something important to recognize, here I have a little bit more knit on the cap. There's going to be a time where you're going to put the work down because the phone rang or something, and you're going to pick it back up again and wonder where you are in the rib pattern. I want to take a look at the difference between knit and purl stitches, because we know we have a knit 2, purl 1 rib. But where are you if you drop your work and you pick it up again? Let's take a close look at the stitches. These 2 stitches are knit stitches, and it's because they look like V's on the needle. This one here is a purl stitch because it looks like it has a little scarf around its neck. There's a horizontal loop right under the stitch on the needle. So that's a purl, those two are knits, that's a purl. And when I put this work down, I ended with knit, knit, purl. So I'm ready to work 2 knit stitches. And that, of course, is going to happen. You're not going to finish this hat in one sitting, so you're going to have to pick it up and figure out where you are. Next up, we're going to work the decreases in the hat, which is going to shape the crown, and switch to double pointed needles. You should be at a point in your hat where you follow the directions to knit the number of inches that you need for the size you're making. And now we're ready to start decreasing, which is this part of the hat. We decrease for the crown, so we have a gradual slope up to the very top center of the hat. Now, let's take a look at the work and see how this is done. You'll see here that I'm at the beginning of my round. I'm going to slide my marker, and each of the sizes is written a little bit differently, but I'm making a child size hat here, which tells me to knit 9 or to work 9 in pattern and then knit 2 together. So I'm going to knit, knit, purl, knit, knit, purl. That was 6. Knit, knit, purl. That was 9. And now I knit 2 together. And the way we do that is, instead of just going into 1 stitch to knit, we go through 2 stitches on the needle, wrap it and pull it through, making 1 out of 2 stitches. Now I work another 9 in pattern. And I'm going to start with a purl stitch here. And remember, I can tell that that's a purl stitch because it looks like it has a little scarf around its neck. So it's purl, knit, knit, purl. I'm going to work these 9 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I'm going to work knit 2 together again. Now, you have a purl stitch here and a knit stitch, but you're going to knit those 2 together regardless of what stitches you see there. It's always knit 2 together. And then it's back to 9 in pattern. So you're going to follow the directions and eventually get back here to the beginning of your round. And then I believe, yes, after a decrease round, you just work the round in pattern as you see it. And you've been working knit, knit, purl all the way up to this point in the hat. But things are going to change. You're going to have to pay attention to what you see and what you knit. For example, I have knit, knit, purl, knit, knit, purl, knit, knit, purl, knit, purl, because I knit those 2 together when we were decreasing, right? So you'll work a decrease round, and then you'll knit in pattern, or you'll work in pattern to what you see, and then the third round is another decrease round, and you're going to keep, the top of the hat is going to keep getting smaller and smaller until eventually it doesn't fit on these round needles anymore. When that happens, you're going to want to switch to double pointed needles, which is why the pattern calls for these as well. And the way that you switch to double pointed needles is that instead of using the left needle, you just pick up an empty double pointed needle and start working with it, like this. And you'll put a third of the stitches on this needle, a third of the stitches on another double pointed needle, and the last third on a third double pointed needle, and you'll have an empty one to knit with. We'll be done with the circular needles at that point. I'm not counting, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's a third of my stitches. I pick up another empty DPN. And just start working the stitches onto here. You only have to do this when you find that the stitches are really stretched around the circular needle. I like to stay on the circular needles as long as I can because it does go more quickly. Okay, So you will work the last of those stitches on the third double pointed needle, and you will use your fourth double pointed needle, the empty one, to knit with, and you'll just knit onto the empty double pointed needle each time you go around. It'll be just like working in the round, but you're using these three that will accommodate fewer and fewer and fewer stitches instead of the circular needle. So go ahead and follow your pattern, and in the next video we're going to talk about closing up the very top of the hat. You should have very, very few stitches on the needles right now. I have 3 needles flopping around with only 6 stitches total, which means I'm ready to finish off the top of the hat. The different sizes have a different number of stitches left at the very end. This happens to be the child size. Let's take a look. There are my 6 stitches, and here's my working yarn. I've already cut my working yarn and left it about a foot long. For this, I'm going to need a tapestry needle, just a big blunt-ended yarn needle, and these come in plastic and metal. You can get them at just about any craft store. I'm going to thread the yarn on the tapestry needle, and my yarn is coming out of this stitch right here. So just like when I was knitting this, I'm going to start with this one here. I'm going to thread the needle through the 2 stitches on that needle, that knitting needle, pull it through, go to the next one, thread it through those 2, and then the last 2. And then we pull it tight, and that's the top of the cap. We're just about finished here. I want to take the needle and push the end through to the inside of the cap, because we need to weave in these ends to secure them. And there are different ways of weaving in ends, but in this case, because we were working ribbing, the way that I would like to do it is to find this row of knit stitches on the inside. It was purl on the other side, it's knits on this side, and just pick up one leg of the V, kind of half twisting it, for several stitches, and this will get the end secure, and it also is a way of securing the end without working across this way, which would make the hat less stretchy. So I've pulled it through several stitches there, and I can go ahead and cut the yarn short now. Done with that one. We still have one more end here at the very beginning of the hat. I'm going to leave the hat inside out, thread my needle, and do the same thing. Just picking up one leg of the V, half twisting it, down for several stitches like that, and then cutting it short. Turn it inside out, and you have a finished hat, ready to go. So that's how to make your first hat, knitting in the round, working on double pointed needles, all kinds of skills that you've learned from this project. Good luck.